everybody to another great episode of Real Life Matters. And I'm your host, DBoss. But we're having a special RLM segment. But before I tell you that, I'm talking about our RLM tip, laughing. To laugh in your life brings great, it releases a lot of stress. It releases the blood pressure, brings your blood pressure down. It makes you look younger. It makes you feel vibrant. It makes you feel like 100 or $1,000,000, I should say. So, I'm telling everybody there's laughing classes that people can take if they don't want to laugh at home. But, you can always just laugh with yourself, laugh with somebody, put on a sitcom or something that you find is funny and just laugh. And also it's good for your abs. So a lot of people, and you didn't know that, didn't you? It's good for your abs. So if you want to tone your abs a bit more, you better start laughing. All right. So today we are going to be doing the RLM Spiritual Enlightenment series, and that's with Miss Edie. She's a spiritual advisor, an intuitive healer, and a life coach. And today she's going to be talking about the topic, and we're going to get right into it with her, blooming blessings. So with no other further ado, I introduce to you Miss Edie.
Thank you, DBoss, for having me back. And hello, RLM family. It's always so great to see you. Thank you for starting. I didn't know all that stuff about laughs, but I know we're going to get some in these abs tonight. So that's awesome.
I'm encouraging everybody. And, I'm getting a lot of good feedback from it and stuff. A lot of people didn't know that your abs, you could tone your body.
Wow. Perfect. So let's get the jokes rolling tonight.
I knew you would say that. So I said, well, you know what? And everybody's been like, what? So all these, I've interviewed some other coaches and different people that do different business coaches and all different types of people. Yeah. So they said, well, shoot, I got to incorporate that laughing thing in my thing.
The best thing. And I'm like an inappropriate laugher. So like when everyone is in an awkward silence, that's when I laugh, just because that's my, reaction. But I also am a comedian. That's what we always joke about, that I'm a medium, but I also crack jokes. And I think I'm funny sometimes. So we'll see.
Well, it's not about if you're funny or not. It's about, like you just releasing that stress. And that's what a lot of people do. Of course, if there's appropriate time when to laugh or something thing. But, it's good to just laugh, because if you're looking all serious all the time, that's going to bring the lines and all that stuff in your face.
Exactly. And plus, in a way, you're exercising your muscles upward. And if you're frowning, then you're pulling your face down. So technically, you're causing your own line. But it makes sense. But I'm so excited to be back. And thank you, everybody, for the feedback. We've had so much fun. And DBoss, thank you again for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to work with all of you. And I know we had a couple questions. So that's kind of how we were gearing a couple of these next episodes, so that we can talk a bit more. As a coach, I'm just excited to share different ways and ideas for us to sort of take our everyday experiences and navigate a little bit more positivity through them, especially when things are really tough, and they have been. So I think this topic of laughter is perfect, because we're talking about blooming blessings. And sometimes you can be in the biggest mess and you just can't help but laugh. Like, has it ever happened when something terrible happens and you're just like, you know what, all I can do is laugh at this right now? So it's true.
But it's laughing. It's a way that you're just, throwing off, you're just throwing off that stress, because if you hold it in, what are you going to do? Or else you start crying. Crying can relieve a little bit of stress too. But then after you just start laughing, like, what am I crying for?
Yeah. And then, you laugh at yourself too sometimes, because then it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. And then we have those facepalm moments, but it's also important. So I'm really happy to be back. And DBoss, thank you for this beautiful topic today. I know we have all sorts of different directions we can start with this, because we're talking about blooming, and blooming is also, after the period of growth. So sometimes I like to talk about it when I'm doing any personal coaching situations where it's like, we've been through something, right? Growing pains. When we're in a circumstance or something that we're trying to move forward from, it gets a little heavy. So then at what point, through all this pressure, through all this negativity, through all this darkness, or whatever you're perhaps feeling in, you're planted. If we listen to that quote that says, if you're finding yourself under those circumstances, circumstances. You're not buried, you're planted. And I feel like we're, I like God, so I always say we're divinely positioned or placed so that there's a reason for why we are, that we are being asked to grow from. And with blooming blessings, it's just talking about that this is your season to bloom, which means breaking free from the surface, coming through from whatever it was, overcoming those obstacles, and truly shifting your focus into the light side of things, and in terms of positivity. And I know there's all sorts of stuff all over the internet on how to shift your focus and how to transform and rewrite your script, that language that you're saying to yourself. And I just love sharing these ideas because some of the smallest techniques are the simplest ways for you to just shift it from, sometimes we have all these painful things. And I've studied with Tony Robbins and Bob Proctor, and even Tony teaches about the attitude of gratitude and just shifting that, and how taking kind of a difficult situation that maybe you've been through and recognizing that you've survived it, and moving over some traumas or moving over some painful situations allows this beautiful, almost like new life to come out of you and to grow inside of you. And I don't just mean for women, we can have children, but there's other aspects that we are creative forces, and men as well, and whatever other identities you take. It's just about being able to be creatively expressive and allow those little buds of ideas and plans to flourish and start to grow, and taking that further. So I know it's kind of there's different ways.
We could give an example, example for someone, Todd had said, well, how would you grow from a relationship?
Right.
And so if you had a relationship and now you're into something else, but sometimes you're still thinking about that other person, but you're trying to move forward. So I don't know if that's a good example.
That's a great example. I think that's one that a lot of us have had, right? We've all been with someone where maybe there's been some great parts, and maybe there's been some parts that are less compatible. Let's put it that way. And I feel like when you're in those parts where you're missing somebody, it's really hard because you feel drawn. You want to go back to the comfort zone, right? When we're talking about growth, it's outside of your comfort zone. It's on the other side of the fear. It's outside of those boundaries that you're limiting, or perhaps understanding that that's all you've known so far. So by pushing yourself outside of a relationship, so this could be a situation, I mean, Todd, thank you for your question, but this can also be about maybe there's a reason why the two of you can't continue together. And then when you're starting from this place of recognizing that, sometimes that's very painful, right? You really love this person. How do you move on to a new direction without them, especially when we've become so comfortable? And sometimes circumstances you can't live without them because, financially or emotionally, there's a lot of connections that people have. But because of COVID, a lot of people are in circumstances that, how do I stay in this situation when I'm not happy? How do I stay in this situation when perhaps my path now or my personal journey is taking me in a different direction, and we're no longer aligned, or we're no longer seeing the same futures? It doesn't mean that you're not on the same page, but maybe that chapter is closing and it's time to write a new series, a new season of your life. And so it's kind of neat how you get these opportunities. But what I recommend also is the closure. Sometimes it's really hard for us to accept things. And part of the whole series of denial, all the different emotions we go through, nah, it's okay, we'll make it work. Yes, you do, until a point that it becomes too burdensome. And then you're carrying this relationship with you and exhausting yourself. So it's also a self-awareness, because at what point is that pain too much? And sometimes the other person isn't contributing. The other person is also not at the same level. So there's different relationship coaches and counseling. And of course, I'm always here to guide people through dynamics. But I'm definitely not a marriage counselor by any means, but I know that it just has to do with us learning how to adapt to these new situations. And sometimes it's hard to get that closure. And in these situations, if you're moving forward, you allow, there's different cards that I use. And of course, when I'm doing my messages and helping people navigate past these circumstances, it's like, if you feel like you're settling, meaning there's parts that you're not getting out of your relationship or out of your dynamic, right? Like all these good parts, right? The pros and cons, or however you want to do it. But you have all these amazing aspects, but then there's the aspects of you. And we have to keep remembering, like, what was your vision in this relationship? What is your vision of your future? Is it with a family? Is it without a family? And then how does that work with your person? Because, like, let's use the topic of children in a relationship. Usually it's children, money, finances, right? Like, is a huge factor, because where do we live? How do we live? Can we afford our means of living? And then you also have to have that trust that you're both living within that boundary of availability. And because children would be like my simplest example, if one partner wants them and the other doesn't, then you're staying with someone who either honors what you want or doesn't. And if, depending what side of that you are on, you could be blocking someone's blessing. You could be blocking someone's ability to have that future, or they are for you. And this can also mean in friendships. This can also mean in family dynamics. It's painful sometimes to walk away from people that we love. And it's just a simple example. And the way that you create and cultivate this new ground within yourself sometimes has to come from like those difficult moments of separation, where you really do kind of like, it's like you're tearing out these roots of something that you planted, and then you almost have to go through like this grieving. And for the first time in my life, it's like you have to grieve all these things that you sowed, that didn't reap what you thought it would. And at the same time, that's why sometimes you get in circumstances, because you keep watering plants that aren't watering you back, or you're watering people or situations that don't truly love you. And sometimes we overwater, right? We love people more than they deserve sometimes. And I'm not saying that people aren't lovable, but you can love people so much until you just have to love yourself more than the pain that love is causing you. And that's the tough love parts that, we also navigate through, because sometimes there's dynamics you do need to move away from, and especially when it's exhausting. And that's kind of where you create this new allowance of yourself. So when we talk about blooming, like your blessing, your life, your ability, and no matter what your circumstances, I'm sure that all of us can take a moment and really think about a time where we actually prayed to be where we are today. And maybe right now you might be a little behind where you were, but it's also an awareness that you've grown. You've developed all these skills and knowledge, and maybe now things are changing around you, so your environment has presented a new pressure. And sometimes you've outgrown your environment, so you need to be repotted and put into a different setting so that you can truly bloom. If you're around toxic
Like that could be like if you want to, like, maybe change your job or
yes,
go in a different direction, or
yeah.
maybe you say, okay, you know what, I don't want to work at a job, I want to do a business. So that's what you're trying to say then.
Yeah, and in whatever way, for example, like that relationship setting as well. Like if you're not happy in your relationship, but meanwhile to someone else you're their dream come true, or someone else possesses those qualities that this person might not. And I know it's about also knowing what you want. And sometimes the hardest part when we're in these dynamics is we don't recognize that we're actually being shown what we don't want, but we're in denial of accepting that. So then you're kind of hindering yourself, because you're loving somebody that you also have to love the pain with. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, even in a job, it's the same thing. Some of us have maxed out the scale that you can climb in managerial positions, or you've out earned the maximum earning in a company, and then you still need more. So what do you do? Or perhaps you've worked in corporate your whole life, and then now you're on YouTube and TikTok doing tarot readings and helping people navigate their destiny. So you never know where things are going to go. But I like, for we'll talk about a few different topics here too, but even just accepting those difficulties, because sometimes it's like the carpet's pulled out from under you, and then it's like, what do I do? But you also have to recognize, and we're going to talk about that next when we're talking about creating beginnings. It's going to be our next episode. But you can create a beginning sometimes by creating an ending, and those endings
Okay.
are also kind of like a period, like a final point. This is it. You know what? This is our impasse. This is where we can't continue. And perhaps this is you personally with your health. right? You get some news from the doctor and he says, listen, you got to make these changes with your health or else these are the consequences, or these are the side effects, or perhaps you're feeling it already and that's why you're there, right? But if you take small adjustments or make decisions, healthy movements or foods or nutritionally, sometimes it's very simple, but it's those small steps that create those big changes. And that's how you're sort of daily cultivating new beginnings. So for anyone who's looking for a positive community like DBoss, we just started it on Facebook. It's my cavalry community for healthy
Oh,
living and free. And so it's a brand new movement we're starting. So we got a few people in there. So if you guys want to join us, it's to share healthy meals, healthy workouts, healthy ideas, and it's just to support each other. So we just have another reference point for one another to stay connected, and for you to also share your beautiful cultural associations to what the word health means for you, and just to keep us motivated and inspired, because we all have different styles. And even me, I'm European, so I know that there's different spices and even cool things that we introduce. So it's been really fun. And just because we're growing, like blooming is about allowing yourself to grow. And when those petals of your heart or your soul are starting to blossom and open up, you also reveal parts of you that you've never realized. And that's kind of part of the blessing, because it's like you're learning yourself all over again, or the people around you get to witness. Right? Have you ever? Yeah, I mean, look, you look so beautiful today too. And here's these small little changes sometimes that we make to give our appearance, right? It could just be like putting our hair a different way, or using a different lipstick for ladies, and for gentlemen maybe it's putting on some different shoes that day that really pump up your outfit, and putting and it's exciting.
Yeah, so if anybody has any of those difficulties, like for the blooming, you're blessed, they can come to you to figure out. So they would come to you, and what would happen? They would just
So
sit down and have a consultation or something like that, or
yeah, so I do different types of styles where we can do one-on-one coaching, or we can even, like, because if you're into astrology, which I also do as well, I can look at your chart, and we can also determine blockages. Usually the reason why you're not blooming or opening up is because there's either something that you are blocked by internally, whether it's like an emotional or mental, or someone, I don't know about you, maybe you've all had people in your life that haven't fully supported you, but because they put that seed of doubt in your mind about yourself, you've been carrying it around the whole time and you didn't even know. And then at the same time, it became a psychological association to who you've allowed yourself to become because of an external imprint, right? That's what families do, that's what cultures do. And I'm not saying that they're right or wrong, but sometimes they're out of date. And
okay,
sometimes part of it is to just speak to somebody. So when I work with someone one-on-one, we explore that. And it's also about individually, right? It's unique to each of us. Yours is different than mine, and mine is different than Todd's, and we're all
yeah,
just kind of learning new things. But I work with my beautiful clients have all had some amazing results this year, so I'm so proud of them. We've all certainly bloomed, and it's
okay,
been because we've been navigating these circumstances. And I know that it's not just one thing. Sometimes it's your current daily situation is unknown, right? The future is unknown. We're hit with fear in the news, we're hit with fear in our communities, and we also have to navigate that. And so trying to stay positive also helps when you're around people who are reinforcing that support system. And most of us don't have that in our real world. And maybe you have a room full of people around you right now, but nobody knows that secret little idea that you've been wanting to do for so long. And this is your chance to give it life and to start creating that vision. And sometimes it's a lonely road. It is, and it's a little scary because you do face diversity and adversity, and it is also part of that pressure. And I talk about that in The Power of Mental Wealth, my novel,
that's
which
your book. There you go.
I'm here with Les Brown, and I in the chapter that I'm featured in, I talk about the manifestation and the gift of giving, and how it is a law of reciprocation, a universal law that once whatever you put out, it comes back. So make sure you're putting out some good vibes and good energies and good gestures and blessings, because if you're a blessing to someone else, blessings will always find you. So blooming
All
these
right.
beautiful gifts, they come back. So I hope they find you.
All right. You know, that was really informative, and that was a great session that you just gave everybody. So if people want to reach out to you, Miss Edie, and stuff like that, where can they find you?
Awesome. So I have my own website, MISSEDIE.com. And just again, a friendly reminder, because there's so many people who impersonate myself and other leaders, it's really important for you to make sure that you use your discernment. So use only the links provided, or again, MISSEDIE.com, MISSEDIE.com, and it'll have all the information there. And do explore.
And there's one D, people, one D.
Yes, one D, not Eddie. It's Eddie without the D, Miss Edie. So here we are.
You know, 'cause a few people probably had typed that in. They go, "Oh, that's not her."
Yeah, no, don't know who that would be. But at the same time, you can also follow us on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, and stay plugged in with the communities, and join our Healthy Challenge on Facebook as well. It's the Cavalry 2023, Living Healthy and Free. So I hope you guys will be there.
All right. Well, Miss Edie, I do want to thank you for this Blooming Your Blessing session. And it was very informative. And I'm, you know, and I'm encouraging people, you know, if they're having any time and they're not getting to a place where they are in their life, that they can reach out to Miss Edie, and she will reach out to you back, and very quickly. So I just want to thank Miss Edie for this session, for Blooming Your Blessings. And we're going to go into another topic so soon. So anyways, I do want to thank the people for tuning into the Real Life Matters Spiritual Enlightenment series with Miss Edie. And so good night and bye for now.